Ever scrolled past a medical meme and thought, who made this? Like, are they allowed to find that funny?
Right.
Well, today's deep dive is for you. We are digging into a study all about healthcare humor,
hmm
as seen through the lens of Instagram memes.
Yeah. Instagram memes.
Specifically, memes made by healthcare professionals.
That's right. We're talking doctors, nurses, even medical students,
Yep.
all navigating the world of online humor within the very specific context of their profession.
Because let's face it, social media is already a minefield
Oh, yeah.
for anyone trying to be professional but throw in the life or death stakes of healthcare.
Right.
And things get interesting really fast.
Like it's real.
So researchers in Norway dove headfirst into this world. They analyzed hundreds of Instagram memes from accounts run by both medical students and practicing nurses.
Interesting. And one of the first things that jumped out, at least to me, was
Yeah.
the difference in what gets a chuckle, depending on where you are in your medical journey.
Yeah.
Turns out med students and seasoned nurses have very different senses of humor.
Which makes you wonder, like, what are they each finding funny? Are med students cracking jokes about, like, anatomy exams?
Yeah.
While nurses are posting memes about 12-hour shifts and grumpy patients?
You're surprisingly spot on. The study found that nursing-related accounts, right, often had much larger following.
Really?
Yeah, and focused heavily on the daily grind of the job. Think long hours, challenging interactions, like those, universal healthcare experiences. They're the ones in the trenches.
Right. They're the ones on the front lines dealing with the realities of patient care day in and day out.
Exactly. Whereas medical student accounts tended to be smaller
Okay.
and centered more around the student experience.
Right.
Exams, studying, maybe the occasional existential dread about their future career path.
Okay, I'll admit, I relate to that last one a little too much even now.
Okay.
But here's where this study takes, I think, a fascinating turn.
Okay.
They didn't just analyze the, content of the memes. They had people rate them on an offensiveness scale.
Fascinating, right? Because it gets at this question of what flies and what flops
Totally.
in the world of medical humor. Because let's be honest,
Yeah.
there's a fine line
Oh, yeah.
between a harmless chuckle and something that could be perceived as wildly unprofessional.
Totally.
Right.
And that line probably gets even blurrier when you're talking about a field as sensitive as healthcare.
Oh, absolutely.
So did the researchers find some, magic formula for what makes medical humor acceptable? So did they, crack the code on acceptable medical humor?
Well, not exactly a magic formula.
Okay.
But you might be surprised to hear that only a small percentage of the memes they analyzed actually focused on patients.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. I would have thought patients would be, prime meme material.
Yeah, it's a common assumption.
Yeah.
But this study suggests that healthcare humor is often more about the shared experience of the profession itself,
Right.
the struggles, the wins, the inside jokes that only make sense if you've walked a mile in those scrubs. Okay, so maybe not as much patient bashing as we might have assumed.
Right.
But I'm still super curious about those patient-focused memes. What were people laughing at?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting. The researchers did a deep dive into the themes behind these memes,
Okay.
and 3 major categories emerged.
Hit me with theme number 1.
All right, so the first theme was all about trust, or more specifically, the breach of trust.
Oh, juicy. Tell more.
Yeah, this is where the study really starts to unpack the ethical gray areas of healthcare humor.
Okay.
Some memes, particularly those rated as more offensive, actually joked about deceiving patients.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Like what? Give me an example.
One example involved a healthcare worker pretending a syringe contained saline when it actually held antipsychotic medication. Whoa. Yeah, that's not just a harmless joke anymore. That feels like it crosses a line.
Exactly. And it brings up a critical issue. The power imbalance inherent in the doctor-patient relationship.
Right.
Even if it's meant to be funny, that kind of humor can feel, exploitative, especially when it involves someone's health and well-being.
Absolutely. Humor at the expense of someone's vulnerability just isn't funny.
Yeah.
But it does make you wonder, if healthcare workers are posting these kinds of jokes online, even if it's just for laughs, does that, subtly impact how they interact with patients in the real world?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's something the study authors really wanted to highlight.
Yeah.
Even if it stays online, this kind of humor could potentially I don't know, chip away at empathy
Hmm.
or desensitize healthcare workers to the seriousness of their patients' concerns.
It's a sobering thought. Okay, so that's theme one, trust and the potential for it to be undermined. What about theme number two? All right, two themes, down one to go. What was that final category of healthcare humor they found?
This last one's a bit lighter. The third theme revolved around finding humor in the everyday moments of healthcare.
Yeah.
Think of those you had to be there situations
Mhm.
that only make sense when you spent time in a hospital or a clinic.
Okay. But those could, go either way, right? So what kind of things are we talking about here? Give me an example.
One example from the study was a meme showing an elderly patient happily folding towels in their hospital room. It's funny because it's so unexpected, right?
Yeah.
But it's not making fun of the patient in a mean-spirited way.
I can see that.
Yeah.
It's more about finding the humor in those little sparks of humanity that happen even in the midst of something as, serious as healthcare.
Precisely. And this actually brings up a really important point. The researchers weren't saying that all healthcare humor is bad.
Right.
In fact, they emphasized how humor can actually be a valuable coping mechanism
Oh, absolutely.
for people in these demanding, often emotionally draining professions.
Dark humor is practically its own language in some of those hospital break rooms.
Right. It's about finding a way to process the intensity of the job
Yeah.
without letting it consume you. But the key takeaway here
Yeah.
is that there's a big difference between using humor as a coping mechanism
Right.
and using it to demean or dehumanize others.
Which brings us back to this idea of e-professionalism, right? How do you balance being your true self online, finding humor in the day-to-day,
Right.
with the responsibility that comes with being a healthcare professional?
It's a real balancing act. And the study isn't about, giving a rule book. It's about starting a conversation.
Right.
It's about encouraging healthcare workers and really all of us to think before we hit share.
Yeah.
What seems funny in the moment could have unintended consequences, especially when it comes to something as important as trust.
So where does this leave us? What's the takeaway for our listeners today?
What really struck me about this study was its call for healthcare education to address this new landscape of online humor.
Yeah.
Maybe instead of just saying, don't post that, right?
Right.
There's a way to use these conversations about memes as learning opportunities.
Now that's interesting. Using humor to spark these, important discussions
Right.
about ethics, empathy,
Yes.
and the unique challenges of working in healthcare can be a really powerful tool for professional development.
Exactly. And it all circles back to that self-awareness, thinking critically about the humor we consume and share,
Yeah.
and how it might influence our perceptions of healthcare and the people who dedicate their lives to it.
That's a thought-provoking note to end on.
Oh.
We've explored the world of medical memes, from the relatable to the honestly kind of cringeworthy. And it turns out there's a lot more to unpack than meets the eye. So next time you scroll past a healthcare meme, take a moment to consider what's behind the laugh. Is it harmless fun, a try for help, or something a little more complex? Food for thought. That's it for today's Deep Dive. Until next time, stay curious.